yeah, so I'm standing around in the middle of this kind of a wave defense practice run. This one was like kind of okay, kind of more the same. Sure, it's fine. And there was a comment previously that asked why we buffer green ships at all, and it struck me that I'd kind of taken for granted, let's call it the wave defense industrial meta, and maybe I should talk about that a little bit. So we're going to leave aside the wave defense combat meta because everyone does that quite differently anyway. You can go and fight biters in kind of any way you want, but for general wave defense, the industrial meta, let's call it that, is somewhat stable. You need to make two things. First of all, you need to make a base that can make a rocket, and then you need to make a rocket. And the first part of that, for a base that makes a rocket, is mostly iron. Like, you need a lot of belt, you need a lot of inserters, you need a lot of pipes for petrochem stuff, you need a lot of assemblers, you need a lot of mining drills. Mining drills are a lot of iron as well. And then, as far as iron ore, you still need steel for chem plants and assembler tools and refineries and beacons and all that kind of stuff. And so the very first thing that will happen, typically after power grid, okay, so maybe not the first, but very early, is some kind of on-patch iron just to start getting some iron. Maybe more or less than this, but the early priority on iron is a big deal, and then getting this first lane of iron, just to get all the things you need to start building the base is like this. Yeah, there's a lot of iron. There's also there's a bit of steel, but it kind of pivots from needing iron to needing steel, and so both my steel builds do this thing where I start off making iron, and then later I make steel out of that iron. And I think a couple of other strategies do this as well, because the thing I want at the beginning is just a ton of iron for belts, for inserters, for pipes, for power grid. Yeah, power grid is actually a huge iron sink between, yeah, the steam engines, just like so much iron. Mining drills as well. So the big dependency to building the base is iron ore, but then the big dependency to build the rocket is actually copper. A lot here in the modules, it even hides the processing unit cost there, kind of, because it needs fluids, because you can't handcraft it, but there's more copper there, there's more copper in the low density structure. There's steel and iron and green chips and things that you need to build the base as well, so one of the tricks is coming up with a plan that lets a base first build itself and then pivot all of those resources into building rocket things. But there's a big dependency on copper, and there's only so much you can get out of any particular map. Mining productivity is a big deal. I think I'm aiming for mining productivity 2 now. Some strategies will do more or less than that, but the general idea is, like, most strats are resigned to getting maybe 3 belts, hopefully 3 belts of copper ore. I've currently got like 2 and a bit, so I've messed something up down there, whatever. I think I was seeing that this thing, this side here is not great. That's with mining productivity 2, that's more than 1 belt, except I'm trying to push it all through 1 belt, so that's not working. But yeah, try to get 3 belts of copper out. And even with 3 belts of copper, I've forgotten the exact number, I probably should have looked this up, but even with 3 belts of copper, it's a long time, quite a long time, to get all the copper you need to build an entire rocket. Between the LDS, between mostly the RCUs, and most of that RCU cost is in green chips. And so the plan is, and this is a pretty common plan, get your 3 lanes of copper kind of as quickly as you can, and start banking some of it for LDS, and then turn the rest into green chips immediately. And the faster you start turning the stuff into green chips, the smaller your green chips build can be. And we'll kind of see that, I think that's a general video about how speedrunners treat buffers in Factorio. But basically, get these green chips running as soon as you can, because you need just a lot of them. And then just let that build up, because there's always other stuff to do. Like, there's the petrochem to go and make, combat usually happens earlier, there's always power grid to manage, stuff like that. And then come back later and have larger builds that kind of empty these buffers. So this stuff here will use green chips significantly faster than I'm making them. And that's Like, that's weird Factorio because it means my throughput is not balanced at all, but it's pretty common for speedruns to do this, just like buffer and empty things. Like, the LDS is another good example. Like, this LDS buffer here is fed with at most one belt of copper because I just don't, this is the bottleneck through which this buffer is filled, and then comes out at a rate at 2 belts. But I've also built, I'm pretty sure I've built more than that. This amount here is actually well ratioed to 2 belts of copper, and then I've got all of this stuff as well because hand feeding, and that's nice and fast. And so I think the even better way to see this is the rocket fuel build, because there's kind of 2 ways that speedruns might build rocket fuel. This normal thing that happens in default settings and any percent is you do a giant rocket fuel build at the end of the run, because that's when you get the technology, and then you'll have a solid fuel buffer that you'll empty into it. You'll have a tank of light oil somewhere. Wave Defense, we can do a different thing where we can have a comparatively small light oil build that goes down much earlier when the petrochem goes down and just takes longer to do its thing. And that's nice because it needs a less power grid. And it's kind of the same thing with the green chips. We've got a smaller green chips build that just takes time getting its stuff done because that's the rate at which copper's coming out of the ground. And then while we're going away and managing other things, we can come back and have much larger builds that crank through all of these green chips and get the whole thing done faster, because it's a speedrun. It's not about matching throughput across all the different stages of production. It's about getting everything done as fast as possible. And in this case, the sort of the generally accepted way is this means that I've killed my iron mine, sure. Get your 3 belts of copper as soon as possible, start turning things into green chips, and then later, with those giant piles of green chips, these machines are not happy with this amount of green chips, but that's fine because presumably when the buffers are empty, the speedrun is either done or busted. So hopefully that little explanation was helpful, useful, and/or interesting. And that's why a green chip buffer happens in Wave Defense. Yeah.